Hey, welcome to the briefing. What I'm going to cover with you today is this. Do not let one angle become the whole story. And I want to stay centered on the 360-degree overview here, because this is one of the reasons that Tool matters so much. Not because leaders need more information for the sake of information, not because every issue needs to turn into a giant investigation, not because every person in the room gets equal weight on every decision. No. The reason 360 matters is because under pressure, one angle can feel like the whole truth, and that is dangerous. So I want to walk this one out loud with you, almost like the thought behind the idea. Because when something breaks, the first report usually sounds useful. It gives you something to work with. It gives the problem a name. It gives your mind somewhere to land. And honestly, that can feel good. A customer says, "Nobody told me what was happening." A team member says, "The shop never gave us an update." The supervisor says, "The new person is not following through." The numbers say, "We missed the target." The senior leader says, "This is an accountability issue." And right away, the leader has something to grab. Communication, follow through, training, staffing, accountability, customer expectations, scheduling, whatever it is. And that is where the trap starts. Because the first report may be true, but true from one angle is not the same as complete. That is the whole point of this briefing. The mistake is not listening to the first report. You should listen to it. You should respect it. You should take it seriously. The mistake is letting that report own the whole story before you have checked the field. So you see here, this is a little different from just saying, read before you act. This is more specific, and this is about knowing what kind of truth you are hearing. Is this the customer's truth? Is this the employee's truth? Is this the supervisor's truth? Is this the data's truth? Is this the process telling you where the delay landed? Is this pressure from above trying to turn one explanation into the final answer? That matters because every angle can reveal something, and every angle can miss something. That is not an insult to the person giving the report. That is reality. People report from where they stand. The customer reports the experience, and the employee reports the friction. The supervisor reports the behavior. The numbers report the outcome. The process reports the delay. The team reports the pressure. Each of those can be accurate, but none of them automatically gives you the whole situation. And if you have led anything under pressure, you have seen this. One person walks in with a clean explanation, and because the room is already tense, that explanation feels like relief. Now the problem has a label. Now the leader has a direction. Now the team can move. Now the leader can sound decisive. But what do you think happens if that explanation is incomplete? The action becomes incomplete too. And that is how leaders create motion without correction. They are not lazy. They are not checked out. They are not refusing to lead. They are acting from one angle and calling it the whole read. That is where the damage starts. Let me make this real. A service location is falling behind. The work is late. Customers are frustrated. The team is tense. The assistant manager is overwhelmed. The senior employee is irritated. The district leader wants to know why the location keeps missing expectations. Now listen to how fast the story changes depending on who you ask. The front counter says, "The shop is not giving us updates." The shop says, "The counter keeps promising times we cannot hit." The assistant manager says, "We do not have enough people." The senior employee says, "The new people are not trained." The district leader says, "The location needs tighter accountability." The customer says, "Nobody told me what was happening." Now here is the hard part. They may all be right. That does not mean they are all seeing the driver. And this is where leadership has to be disciplined. If the leader reacts only to the counter's angle, the fix becomes customer communication. If the leader reacts only to the shop's angle, the fix becomes promise control. If the leader reacts only to the assistant manager's angle, the fix becomes staffing. If the leader reacts only to the senior employee's angle, the fix becomes training. If the leader reacts only to the district leader's angle, the fix becomes accountability. If the leader reacts only to the customer's angle, the fix becomes service recovery. And some of those actions may help. That is what makes this tricky. A narrow fix can still help a little. It can make the surface look better. It can calm the loudest issue. It can make the leader feel like they moved. But if the real issue is a broken handoff between intake, scheduling, shop status, and customer update timing, none of those single angle fixes will hold. The team may work harder, the leader may sound decisive, the customer may get an apology, the update may go out, but the system keeps producing the same failure. That is the cost of one-angle leadership. When the read is too narrow, the fix becomes too shallow. And then the leader gets frustrated because they think, "I already addressed this." But did you address the situation, or did you address one angle of the situation? That question matters because pressure rewards certainty. That is why this happens so often. A clear explanation feels useful. A loud complaint feels urgent. A confident team member sounds convincing. A frustrated customer creates emotional pressure. A missed number creates executive pressure. A visible mistake creates accountability pressure. And the leader wants to respond, and that instinct is not wrong. But there is a difference between responding to pressure and being controlled by it. Pressure pushes leaders toward the most available explanation, the explanation that arrives early, the explanation that sounds concrete, the explanation that gives the leader something to do, the explanation that reduces uncertainty, the explanation that creates the feeling of progress. And if the leader is not careful, that first explanation becomes the whole story. That is where 360 protects the decision. A 360-degree overview is not about collecting endless opinions. It is not about letting everyone debate forever. It is not about avoiding the hard call. It is about seeing enough of the field before one angle gets control of the decision too early. That is the center of it. The first angle tells you where to look. The 360-degree overview helps you understand what you are actually looking at. And there is a difference. The first angle may show pain. 360 helps you find the pattern. The first angle may show impact. 360 helps you find the driver. The first angle may show who is frustrated. 360 helps you see why the pressure landed there. The first angle may give you a response. 360 helps you decide whether that response is strong enough to hold. Now let me be clear, this does not mean the leader gets to hide behind information gathering. You still have to decide. You still have to act. You still have to assign ownership. You still have to correct drift. You still have to move the work forward. But the action is stronger when the leader understands the situation from more than one side. That is the discipline. And that discipline protects people too, because one-angle leadership often corrects the person closest to the failure, not the cause of the failure. The frontline employee gets blamed for a poor customer update, even though the update never reached them. The assistant manager gets blamed for poor execution, even though priorities changed 3 times in one shift. The technician gets blamed for delay, even though intake promised a timeline nobody could hit. The visible person absorbs the pressure because the leader did not widen the read. And what does that create? It creates distrust. People know when leadership is only seeing one side. They may not say it directly, but they feel it. They feel unheard. They feel misunderstood. They feel blamed for conditions they did not create. They feel like the loudest voice wins. And that creates quiet resistance, not always open defiance. Sometimes it looks like compliance without commitment. The team does what was said, but they do not believe the leader understood the situation, and that matters. Execution depends on trust. If the team thinks the leader is only reacting to one angle, they may still comply, but they will not fully commit. They will start protecting themselves. They will start framing issues carefully, and they will start holding back the piece of information they think might make them the target. And now the leader has a bigger problem, because the next read gets weaker. Not because the team has no information, because the team no longer trusts how leadership uses information. That is a serious issue, and it is why this subject matters more than it may look on the surface. Single-angle leadership does not only create a bad fix, it trains the organization to defend angles. Everything becomes staffing, everything becomes training, everything becomes communication, everything becomes accountability, everything becomes attitude. Everything becomes somebody else's department. Everything becomes whatever explanation gets the fastest response from leadership. And when that happens, the organization stops reading clearly. It starts arguing from positions. That is dangerous. Because now the leader is not just solving the current issue. The leader is working inside a culture where people have learned how to present problems in the way that protects their side. So the better move is to separate the angle from the situation. That distinction is simple, but it changes how you lead. The report is an angle. The situation is the full operating picture. Say that again in your head. The report is an angle. The situation is the full operating picture. That means you do not throw the report away. You place it correctly. Instead of saying this is a staffing issue, you say staffing is one angle. What else is shaping the situation? Instead of saying this is a communication issue, you say communication is where the failure surfaced. Where did it start? Instead of saying this person needs accountability, you say accountability may be part of it. Was ownership actually clear before the failure? That does not weaken the leader. That sharpens the leader. It slows the reaction just enough to improve the target. And again, the goal is not to delay action. The goal is to keep the first explanation from becoming the only explanation. That is where the 360-degree overview becomes practical, not as a phrase, as a leadership move. Before you act on the first report, ask 3 questions. First, what angle is this report coming from? Is it coming from the customer, the team, and the supervisor, the data, the process, the pressure above you? That helps you understand what the report can see and what it may miss. Second, what does this angle explain well? Do not dismiss it. Do not get defensive. Do not assume the person is wrong because they only have one part of the picture. Find the value in it. A customer complaint may reveal trust damage. A team complaint may reveal friction. A missed number may reveal performance impact. A supervisor report may reveal behavior under pressure. Every angle has value. Third, what does this angle not explain? That is where the read gets stronger. A customer complaint may not explain the workflow failure. A staffing complaint may not explain poor sequencing. A missed target may not explain leadership inconsistency. A team conflict may not explain unclear ownership. And the missing piece may be where the real driver is hiding. That is the leadership work, not collecting opinions, not trying to make everyone happy, not turning the decision into a committee, just refusing to let one angle become the whole story before the situation has been checked. Here's what that sounds like in real leadership language. A customer complaint comes in. The easy response is, we need better communication. A cleaner response sounds like this. I hear the customer complaint. That tells me the impact. Before we call this a customer service issue, I want to understand where the update failed. Did the shop have the information? Did the counter receive it? Did the customer expectation change? Did anyone own the final follow-up? That response does 3 things. It respects the complaint. It widens the read. It prevents the first angle from owning the whole situation. Here's another. Someone says this is a staffing issue. The easy response is, we need more people. Maybe you do. But a cleaner response is, I hear that staffing feels like the issue. Before we solve this as a labor problem, I want to check whether the schedule, workflow, and handoffs are making the staffing problem worse. That is not overthinking. That is leadership discipline. Here's one more. Someone says, this employee needs accountability. Maybe they do, but a cleaner leadership response is, I hear that accountability is needed. Before we correct the person, I want to confirm whether the standard was clear, the priority was understood, and ownership was assigned. That protects fairness, and it also protects execution quality. Because if you correct someone for something they did not truly own, you do not create accountability. You create defense. And defense slows the truth down. Now, this is where I want you to think about your own pattern. Which angle do you tend to trust too fast? Do you trust the customer angle because customer impact feels urgent? Do you trust the senior leader angle because pressure from above feels heavy? Do you trust the data angle because numbers feel objective? Do you trust the loudest employee because they sound certain? Do you trust the process explanation because it feels clean? Do you trust your own first read because you have experience? That last one is important. Experience is valuable, but experience can also make you lock too early. Because you have seen something similar before, you may think you already know what this is. And sometimes you do, but sometimes the situation only looks familiar on the surface. So what do you think happens if your experience gives you confidence before your read gives you accuracy? You can still move wrong. You can still aim the correction at the wrong layer. You can still miss the driver because the pattern looked familiar too fast. That is why disciplined leaders keep checking the field, not because they lack confidence, because they know confidence without a wide enough read can still create damage. And this is the part I care about most. A 360-degree overview is not about being slow. It is about being harder to fool under pressure. That is the value. Pressure wants you to believe the first clear explanation. 360 says, hold on, that may be true, but what angle is it? Pressure wants you to act from relief. 360 says, not yet, what does this explain well, and what does it not explain? Pressure wants the easiest label. 360 says, before we label it, what are we actually looking at? That is not soft. That is not academic. That is operational control. Because when the leader widens the read, the leader improves the decision. When the decision improves, the correction lands better. When the correction lands better, the team trusts the action more. When the team trusts the action more, execution gets cleaner. And when execution gets cleaner, the same issue is less likely to come back wearing a different name. That is the chain. Better read, better decision, better correction, better trust, better execution. That is why one angle cannot become the whole story. So here's the practical takeaway. The next time someone brings you a problem, do not reject the first report, respect it. Listen to it, use it, but do not surrender to it. Ask, what angle is this coming from? Ask, what does this angle explain well? Ask, what does this angle not explain? Then widen the red before you narrow the fix. And if you are already in a pressure moment, keep it simple. Customer angle, team angle, supervisor angle, data angle, process angle, pressure from above angle. You do not need an hour. You need enough of the field to stop the first explanation from taking over the decision too early. That is the discipline. Because the first report may be useful. The first report may be true. The first report may identify real pain. But it is still only an angle. And under pressure, one angle becomes dangerous when it becomes the whole story. So read wider before you narrow. Listen carefully, but do not lock too early. Respect the report, then check the field. That is how leaders protect decision quality before action begins. That is how they stop chasing symptoms. That is how they start leading from a cleaner read. Thanks for listening to the briefing.